Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Heartland Poker Tour podcast. I am your host, Jaymz Larson, and thanks so much for joining us today. We also want to thank our good friends over at Hold'em Radio. They're airing this, and we thank them for all their support. On the show today, we have got a two-time HPT champion. He's got 20 cashes, 8 final tables. He's the all-time HPT money leader. Please welcome to the show, Craig the Legend Casino. How are you doing, my friend?
Hi, James. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great. When I know you very well and everybody on the HPT, but when I read your resume here, I mean, this is pretty cool. 595,000 in all-time HPT earnings. The 20 cashes, the 8 final tables, and the 2 championships. How did you do it, Craig? And how do you continue to do it?
Geez, I don't know. I just feel fortunate to have gotten there, and I'm just a competitive guy, and I study the game. You know, I don't really watch football or baseball on TV anymore. I watch poker whenever I can. I read all different varieties of poker books and try to incorporate what I can into my play as I play.
Craig, how many years have you been playing Texas Hold'em?
I only really started playing in the fall of 2009, and I played pretty early on. I played my first Heartland in 2010 in the spring, so it's like 5.5 years. So I missed the first 5 years of the Heartland altogether, and I've been there for the last 5.5. So I'm kind of proud of the fact that I've been able to get where I've gotten after missing 5 years of it. But that just shows all the players out there there's always time, and come out and play. You don't know what may happen.
On the line with us, Craig Casino. Now, October 2nd, 2011, you won your first HPT event. Let's go back in time. What was that like to take down that massive field, and your payday was just over $293,000? How did that change your life?
It was a dream. I mean, it gave me some poker notoriety, of course, with the Heartland and other players, and I was felt really fortunate because it was the third event from the Heartland that I had ever cashed. The first one I cashed, I finished 7th, which at that time was not a TV table with the Heartland, as only 6 players were going to the TV event. So had I known then what I know now, I have almost no doubt that I know I would have made the final table, but I got involved with the other big chip stack at the table and kind of made a decision that I regretted after, and it ended up costing me my chips. So I thought I may never get back there again. I may never get that close. And then a few months later, I was fortunate enough to get to Colorado's final table and eventually win it.
Tell me this, Craig. I don't know. I think I've asked you this before, but is it true that you had a big hand early on in day 2, the event that you won, and you actually got up, you lost the hand, you got up and left the table, and you were going to walk out of the Golden Gates poker, the poker room, and you were going to leave? Is that a true story?
Yeah, it is. It wasn't early on, though. It was day 2. We were down to 27 players. I lost like 580,000 on a hand where I had turned a straight, and the other player, we were betting back and forth. He ended up all in. I called. He had a set, and he rivered the full house. So I'm getting up off the table. The blinds are at 30,000 and 60,000 at the time, and I was getting up off the table. I was calling my wife, telling her I was going to catch the flight that night.
Wow.
And I was getting my stuff together, and I'm just starting to walk off the table. And Bernard Lee said, you may have some chips left. Don't leave. Hey. So I looked back. The dealer finishes counting it out, and he throws me 2 black $10,000 chips. So I've got 1/3 of a big blind. I go all in that hand. I win it. I go all in the next hand. I win it. I go all in the next hand. I sucked out to win it. Next thing I knew, I had almost 1 million chips after those 3 hands. When we got down to the final 9, I was chip leader at the table and was able to win over the other 5 opponents when we got to the final moment. So it was kind of surreal. I hate that word surreal, but there's no other word to describe it.
Wow. Well, I'm sure you might want to remember Bernard Lee with a Christmas card this year. So we'll have more with Craig Casino right here on the Heartland Poker Tour podcast, but we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Jaymz Larson and Craig Casino here on the Heartland Poker Tour podcast. Now, we talked about your victory in 2011, but then, Craig, 4 years go by, 4 long years, a lot of success, but it took you 4 years to win your next title, and that happened here recently, November 23rd, 2015. So talk about what happened between championships.
Well, I had a number of cashes along the way and a number of final tables, and it's just not easy to get there. It's not easy to get to the final. It's not easy to cash, for one. It's not easy to final table, and it's definitely not easy to win the event. I mean, you're playing a lot of other excellent players. A lot of times you're playing world champions. I played Greg Raymer at 2 of those final tables. I had Joe Cat at this one, Vanessa Russo. I mean, there's some top players that show up. And, people said, well, it took you so long in between. And it's like, wow, when you have 8 final tables and 2 of them are wins, to me, it's not too bad. I mean, you can kind of expect that. I mean, I remember hearing that Phil Ivey was on his 9th World Poker Tour final table before he finally won the 10th, I think is what the story was. And that's how difficult it is. I mean, you think about it. You sit down with 10 people at a table over and over and over again. How many times are you going to be the winner? Or 9 players, I should say. How many times are you going to be the winner out of that group? And it's just, it's not. You may not win any of them. You may win 3, but I doubt you'd win 4 or 5. So 2, I'm comfortable with. I would like to have more, but I'm not going to be greedy. I'm pretty happy.
So you talk about final tables, 8 final tables for you, 7 which were TV tables. Right behind you, actually tied with you, Sean Roberts and Stan Jablonski. Now, these guys are friends of yours. Talk about that, Craig.
Well, Stan and I met at Prairie Meadows pretty early on, like 3 years ago. I'd been around the HPT for maybe a year and a half. And Stan and I just happened to be walking down the hallway one day. We start talking. And, we started comparing strategies, talking about hands, and he's the one that gave me my nickname, and we kind of laugh about that all the time. But he's a great guy, and he's had a lot of success of his own lately. He's one of the best amateur players in the country, in my opinion, and he's starting to really show what he's got. He's been showing it on the HPT with 8 televised tables, and the last 2 World Poker Tour events that he played in, he finished 5th and 3rd, and I think he's in first place right now for Player of the Year on the World Poker Tour. So that's impressive stuff. Sean Roberts, he's just a great player too. He's aggressive when he needs to be. He knows when to lay in the weeds and settle down a little bit. But he's been on a tremendous run, and he and I were real close to each other on the all-time money list with the Heartland Poker Tour. And the way he was going, he was so hot, and I was kind of cool there for a while. I thought he was going to overtake me, but with this last win, I've given myself a little breathing room, so I'm kind of happy about that right now.
Yeah, Sean is so good, and you talked about Stan. I think, he gave you a nickname. We need to come up with a nickname for Stan Jablonski. We need to think of something good, though.
We will. I'm not quite sure what it is right now, but there's a few things we've called him from time to time, but I don't think you'd want him as a nickname. But
No. So, you play a lot of HPT. Pretty much, you're almost exclusive with the HPT. You do play other tournaments, and boy, you had a nice little run in the Chicago Poker Classic. I think that's worth talking about.
Yeah, I don't play all the time because I have a business to run. So I try to make 60% of the Heartlands every year, and that's my home game. I've said that on the TV show a number of times because it's just what I like to do. I like the fact that you can travel somewhere and get out there Friday and head home either Sunday or Monday. Hopefully it's Tuesday because they film the final tables on Monday. But so you can get to a major national tournament and get it done in just a few days. But the Chicago Poker Classic in 2013, 2 years after I won Colorado, they had this unusual tournament that drew 5,165 players. There were 6 day ones, and I was sick for day 1, A, B, C, and D. I still wasn't feeling good the next day, but I went in anyway, go into play, and it was a $350 buy-in, and ended the day with 150,000 chips. You could re-enter each day, one time each day, and every time that you made the money, which was the top 12% of the field, you got $3,000 on the spot. So a lot of players were, of course, playing every single day.
Sure.
I had 6 entries. Well, anyway, I ended up with 150. The next go to day 2 on that one buy-in, I ran that up to 10 million. Made the final table, and I had Dan Highmiller at the final table, a well-known pro, and Zalarani ended up heads up with me. He had a lead of 46 million to 4.5, 5 million
Wow.
chips, but I was able to, get some cards, obviously, and come back from that, and I was able to win that. So at the time, they said that it was the biggest tournament in world history outside of the World Series of Poker main event. So to have that one other spot on my Hendon Mob resume and with my Heartland stuff is a nice little spot to have in there.
On the phone with us today, here is the legend, Craig Casino. We'll have more with him after this quick break. Want to remind you, folks, you can follow me on Twitter at @HPTJames. I spell it Jaymz. We'll be right back with Craig. All right, this is the HPT podcast. I'm Jaymz Larson on the phone with Craig, the legend Casino, his second HPT title. He won that on November 23rd, 2015. Now, Craig, there's a little story about this title. You almost didn't even make it to the event. Tell us the story.
No, I had Soaring Eagle set to go. I had my motel reservations made and everything, and I was planning on going. It was the last HPT of the year. It was the Championship Open. And I've never done well at Soaring Eagle. There's 2 locations I've had trouble, there and East Chicago. So I told my wife, I said, I don't know why I'm even going anyway. Well, then she falls outside and breaks her kneecap.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, so it was kind of terrible. And she's on crutches and in a cast, from crotch to her knee. So right away, I just called up and canceled my hotel reservations. I thought I'm not going anyplace, obviously.
Wow.
Well, a few days before, she said, why don't you go? She said, what are you going to do, sit home and watch me sit here? I said, I need to help you with stuff. She said, our daughters live blocks away. There's always somebody here. She said, there's nothing I need. There's no reason for you to be here. Go ahead and go. It's the last one of the year. So I skipped Thursday. I went Friday, got through with 1 entry, and ended up winning the tournament over the 465 players, which was pretty amazing. But the other thing that made that a cool story to me was when I won Colorado, I was wearing this one certain black shirt, and I put it up in my closet, and I haven't worn it since. I had it there, and I thought, I don't run well at Soaring Eagle. I told my wife, I said, maybe I'll bring that black shirt. Maybe I'll at least cash for a change up there. So I bring the black shirt, and wouldn't you know that I'm putting that same shirt on for the interviews and for that final table. It was pretty cool.
Wow, unbelievable. And you took home $153,327. Now, Craig, I know you. I know your life, your career. You've been a successful guy, but what does the money mean to you? I mean, you've made over $500,000 on the HPT. How important is the money to you?
Well, the money's always important, obviously, and I know, a lot of people would like to be in my spot, but I keep it in context. I mean, when we won Colorado, a lot of money went to charity, and of course, there's always taxes because I don't play full time, so I can't write off all the things the professional players do, so I have to just claim it as income, and the taxes are substantial, being in the 40-some% tax bracket. So, it takes a lot of it away, but I devote money to charities and help some friends out, here and there. And like in this particular instance, with the 153, like 60,000 plus goes to the government.
I know.
And I put 50,000 toward a commercial building I had to buy for my business to shorten the time frame, and a couple charities, and I left 30-some thousand on the side for poker buy-ins for next year, and I'm happy with that. So it's been pretty good.
Yeah, the rake in life, that IRS is always a tough one. Don't get me started on that. But, you talk about the charity. I was there on your first victory. I was doing the interviews. I took you over, and the first thing you said to me is, I believe we were affiliated with the DAV at the time, and you paid cash out to the charities, and that meant a lot to me. I'm like, wow, this guy, through all of this, remembers to give money back, and that's pretty cool, Craig.
Well, James, I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because one thing that always bothered me is when we were there for the DAV, they were selling hats. And I said, why are you selling hats? The Heartland always gives 1% of the total prize pool to the DAV. And they said that Colorado's gaming laws precluded that from happening. So when we were playing, when we got done, I knew that they only sold like 30 hats, so they didn't make much money for the DAV. And I said, well, my wife and I will be happy to contribute the 1% for all the players for the total prize pool, which, was, they got their $10,000 because it was $1 million prize pool, and that was just the DAV. And then when I was watching the TV show, Fred Bevel mentioned it, and it went across the bottom of the screen, and it said, Craig has said that he is going to devote 1% of his winnings to the DAV. And I felt it did a disservice, not that I wanted attention but it was 1% of the prize pool. There's a big difference.
Right.
It made me look like a piker.
Right.
And that always bothered me that's there for my kids and grandkids to look at in the future when they watch that and they think, boy, Grandpa only did that. So I wrote a letter to attach to those to the DVDs just so they would know what the situation really was. But so that's what happened.
All right, well, we'll wrap up our interview with Craig Casino after this, and we're going to answer a few Twitter tweet questions that I have, and that'll be coming up after this quick break. You are listening to the HPT Podcast. This is the HPT Podcast. I'm your host, Jaymz Larson. On the phone with me, Craig Casino, calling in from the Chicagoland area. So, Craig, through all of your success, through all of this, what is it besides the money and, of course, being on TV? What do you like most about the HPT, and what keeps you coming back?
I really like the people I've met. I mean, there's some really great people out there, and I could go through a list of them. I mean, but you just have a lot of friends, and when I look at my cell phone, I have all those names under HPT and then who it is, and it just you go to the events, you're going to see them. You got people then to sit down and have dinner with and sit and talk to and, spend a little time, when you're not playing. And, but that's the main thing for me. I mean, that and just the competitive nature of the game. I love playing it. I don't know. I just, I like the aggressive factor of the game. I mean, and how that comes into play and when to apply it. So I just enjoy it.
I was out with our old truck driver, Dale Bear, just last night, and we talked about the story. Him and I were sitting in that bar in that Indiana casino, Belterra, and I think you had just gotten knocked out. You weren't real happy, and you came in there. We ordered a bunch of oysters and about 12 beers, and I remember we were only going to be there for like a beer, and I looked at my watch, and it was like 11:30.
Yeah, well, that's part of it. I mean, when you and I, when we get to sit down and talk, and the other HPT folks, I mean, the guys that work the crew when they're around, I mean, we've always had a good time. It's like a family down there. It's the HPT family, and that's why I devote most of my time to the Heartland. I mean, I go to a couple of the World Series events every year. Like last year, I was only there for 3 days and played 2 events, but my business is busy that time of year, so that's all I could devote. I haven't played a World Poker Tour event yet, although I'm planning on going to the Doyle Brunson. I guess I leave Sunday for that, so I thought I'd give that a shot. And but other than that, that's pretty much my year. HPT events and a smattering of other poker tournaments.
And speaking of that, we've got an event happening on your home turf there, January 14th through the 28th, right in the Chicagoland area. All the information for all of our events is online at hptpoker.com. Before I let you go, Craig, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit because I'm curious. I'm a poker player myself, and I wanted to get to the next level. It just didn't work out for me, so I got into broadcasting. But how did you get so good so fast? I mean, you haven't been playing poker that long, and you've had so much success. How'd you do it?
Early on, I've always understood that poker's about aggression. I mean, I heard a football coach one time say there's 2 types of pressure, the type you feel and the type you apply. And I thought no truer words were ever spoken in any sport other than poker. A lot of times it's not about the cards, it's about the circumstances, it's about the pressure you can apply. And I was an aggressive player when you saw me on TV at Colorado, even then. Now, I snuck in on people back then. I was an older player, and people expected me to play a lot tighter, and I wasn't, and so I got away with some stuff. Now I realize my table image is that I am an aggressive player, and so now I have to consider that when I'm playing, that, what is my long-term image, what is my image right now at the table based on how I've been playing recently, and it's just a constant adjustment. But just being aware of your table image is a huge part of it, and not being afraid to put chips in the middle. You see people making some huge laydowns that I know I would never make, but and often they're wrong. So I'd rather be the aggressor, go after the chips, and the other player's got to prove to me that he's got the hand. I'm gonna make him prove it. I'm not just gonna take his word for it because there's an ace on the board. Assume that he's got one in his hand just because he's made a continuation bet. I'm coming back at you. So I guess that's probably what works for me.
Well, Craig, thanks so much for your time. And I just want to say, as on behalf of the HPT, I'm glad I got a chance to get to know you and hang out with you and follow your story because it's a pretty cool story. You know, not a lot of people know this, but you were a police officer for how many years? That was your career for what, 20, 25 years?
No, only 14. And,
okay, only 14.
I was building the business that I have now, which is insect and disease control for trees during that entire time. And I made a lot of friends there. Hired a bunch of those guys, and I've got, 30 of those fellows working for me now, police officers and firemen, because we're seasonal, so they work part-time but with us, but just around their full-time work, so it works out good for me. I still get to see my old friends. I got a couple guys working with us that have been with me for 40 years now. But and the other good part is my daughter and two of my son-in-laws are police officers in the same town I was in Glen Ellen, Illinois. So
wow.
Pretty cool.
Very cool, Craig. Well, look forward to seeing you over there at East Chicago, Indiana, again, January 14th through the 28th, that event. All the information at hptpoker.com. But thanks again, Craig, for joining us.
Thanks for having me, James. It was a lot of fun. Appreciate it.
All right, that wraps up our podcast here, the HPT podcast. I want to thank Craig, the Legend Casino. Again, you can follow me on Twitter at HPTJames, Jaymz. Have a great night, everybody, and we'll see you at the final table.